What the heck is this?
This is a Abarth modified Fiat 500.
You brought me a Land Cruiser.
Yeah, I did.
You're my hero. The first thing you want to look for on a Land Cruiser is rust. All right, so Chuck threw me a curveball. This is a hot rod, a pocket-sized hot rod, but it's a hot rod. They removed the emission controls. This won't pass. $300, $400, $500 to replace that, that's something to think about. I don't know what they're worth. I'm phoning a friend. What the heck is this?
This is a Abarth modified Fiat 500.
How many of these do they make?
They made 31 of these Abarth.
Okay.
Now there's hundreds more because Abarth also boxed up a parts package.
So you could buy a factory-built one from Abarth.
Right.
Or you could order a kit to convert your own car.
Your own Fiat 500, right?
Right. You know why you're here with this car. I'm going to do an appraisal. During that process, I'm gonna try to educate myself on this crazy little machine you brought in. We're gonna lock you in a room where you can't hear or see anything. And then afterwards, pull you back out and we're gonna see if what number I come up with makes any sense to you, the Abarth expert.
Right,
So,
very good.
all right, so Chuck threw me a curveball. He brought a car that I am absolutely not familiar with. Now, mind you, I know about Fiat 500s. I've owned Fiat 500s. That's the car Carlo Abarth started with when he built these. However, I don't know what they're worth. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk around this car and judge the condition, because the condition of any car is the same. You judge the quality of paint and fit and finish and all those kinds of things. And then I'm gonna have to do a classic game show move. I'm phoning a friend. So here we go. Looking at the car, it's very nicely restored. Chuck bought it in Italy. It was restored in Italy. The European standards of restoration are not as high as ours. They make cars that run and drive and do everything they're supposed to do, but they don't over-restore them. They don't make them better than when they were new. That's the case here. The paint is very nice. The paint is not Pebble Beach show lawn quality, but it shouldn't be. This is a hot rod. A pocket-sized hot rod, but it's a hot rod. The fit and finish is very nice. The door gaps are all nice. The body itself is nice. It has these Abarth added flares to it that are really nicely integrated. The quality of the workmanship is very good. In the back, looking around the engine compartment, you can see all this crazy Abarth bits that have been bolted on this engine that are part of this conversion. It has the Hemi cylinder head on it. It has a Weber carburetor. It has an Abarth valve cover, a deep sump oil pan, an aluminum transaxle in it, which is an Abarth part. The shrouding around the engine compartment looks special and different than a regular Fiat 500. Every little bit that looks tweaked and tuned looks legitimate to me. And I've always liked these little hood stands here that keep the engine lid open for cooling. Now, obviously, I think they might have said it was for cooling and also anticipated some downforce being gained from this. I don't know the speeds these are capable of or if it actually made a difference, but it's a neat touch. On the outside, we can see little things like this engine lid cover has a pin in it. This one has a bolt with a nut on it. Little stuff where it falls down in the details. Again, everything on the car presents well. So I'm satisfied with the exterior of the car, the engine compartment. Let's take a look under the trunk and see what that's all about. Chuck said this came with an extended range fuel tank. It definitely is larger than a standard Fiat 500 tank. It has an electric fuel pump that was added for the Weber carburetor to keep that happy and well fed with fuel. Nice, solid, clean. I'm going to attempt to get in this car and see what the interior looks like. It obviously has a racy steering wheel, it has the Abarth gauges in it. It also has what Carroll Shelby famously called a fireproof interior, meaning they remove the carpet. Click on the key, the fuel pump comes on, and I believe one of these levers between the seats is the starter. It's running on one cylinder instead of two, but I think it's gonna clear out in a second. There she goes. sounds good. It revs nicely above 2,000 RPM, had a good oil pressure. I like it. It's a neat little car. I'm a little concerned I might not be able to get out, but give it a shot. Whew. I was pretty happy about that. I know what the condition of the car is. I know what kind of quality the car is. I'm not sure about the authenticity or what the market says it's worth, especially with 31 cars in existence. From what Chuck said, it's not a big market and a lot of them don't trade hands. So I'm calling up somebody that I think has a better idea than I do, and we're gonna use that. Thank you for taking my call.
Certainly, it's my pleasure.
On the phone with Donald Osborne, world famous Abarth expert. Donald, I need your help. I am appraising an Abarth 695 Assetto Corsa. Can you see it?
I can, and you even pronounced it well, Colin. These are extraordinary cars, of course, the ultimate derivation of the Fiat Cinquecento. The value range of these cars varies greatly depending on if it was a factory-built car or an aftermarket conversion.
Now, the owner of this car says it's one of the 31 verified real factory-built cars. Help me out a little bit. I'm not asking you to put a specific number on it. What do you think? What's the general range for one of these?
A car like this would probably start in terms of value somewhere around $65,000 or $75,000. And if it had a documented race history that was traceable continuously from new, it could go for a multiple of that.
All right, well, that's what I needed to know, and I appreciate your insight and your expertise as always.
My pleasure, Colin.
Okay, well, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Okay, so there you have it. He gave me a general overview of what he feels the market is. So now what I have to do is I have to apply my condition review to his general insights on the market and come up with a number to tell Chuck. Let me crunch some numbers, we'll pull them back in here and we'll see what happens. You threw me for a loop a little bit. You know, you brought me something completely off the wall, but I like that. I appreciate that.
And that's why I did it.
What do you think it's worth? I want to know what you think.
I think it's worth in the 40,000 range.
Yeah, I mean, it's a neat little car. It's unique. They're rare. So I called my buddy Donald Osborne about your car in particular to ask him what the general market is for one of these Abarths. I think the way it sits today, in this market, with the awards you've won, that it did well at Concorso, that it, you know, was on the Avenue in Monterey and it won an award there, there's authenticity there. So I think the way it sits today, it's worth about $60,000.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It means nothing to me because I'll never sell it.
It's a cool little car, and appreciate you bringing it out.
Oh,
and,
thank you. Thanks so much. I'm happy to do it. I collected Abarths from 59 to 72. I just love the idea that he saw something in that little Fiat 500 that nobody else saw.
Hey, John.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
You brought me a Land Cruiser.
Yeah, I did.
You're my hero. Obviously, you know why you're here today.
Yeah.
You've foolishly agreed to let me look over your truck and do an appraisal.
Yep.
I'll tell you what I think it's worth.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, cool. See you in a little bit.
All right, thank you.
I've done my walk around and inspection of John's 1976 FJ40. Now, I'm a Land Cruiser guy. I drove these in high school, I've restored them, I've messed around with them a lot, so I'm really familiar with these trucks. As such, I can tell you the first thing you want to look for on a Land Cruiser is rust. I've looked this truck over really well. It's clearly an Arizona rust-free truck. All the little areas where these things typically rot out in quick fashion are nice and solid and clean. This truck has a really nice body tub. All of the seams and everything are there. When they get rusted out, this rear pan gets rusted away, this gets replaced. All the factory seams are here. I was very satisfied with the condition of the body on this vehicle. Now, it is a fresh build. There are some things that I noticed that, like any fresh build, need to be sorted out. Now, Land Cruisers were not show vehicles and they shouldn't be now, but you can see that they started to wet sand the hood. They didn't exactly finish wet sanding or polishing out. There's still some dirt in the paint, some orange peel. Under the hood, there are some other things we should look at. Now, they've done a beautiful job restoring the truck. Everything looks like it should. It's nice and clean and neat. It's nicely detailed. There were some upgrades made to it. They've added air conditioning conditioning. So they took out the factory dual heaters. They put in an aftermarket air conditioning heating unit. This is good. It's a desirable upgrade. I can see they've added electronic ignition to it, a couple other little touches under here, halogen headlights, that kind of thing. But one thing that's going to be an issue for some buyers is that they've removed the smog system. They've removed the emission controls. And you can see that on this side of the cylinder head where there are these little plugs installed where there should be an air injection rail here for the smog system. There's a bunch of emission controls items that were added to these 1970s Land Cruisers to be sold new in the US. If you live in California or Arizona even, somewhere where you're going to have to get a smog test, this won't pass. That's something to think about. Now, beyond the added air conditioning and heat upgrade, John's team did do a suspension upgrade. It has an Old Man Emu, that's a brand name. It consists of upgraded springs for a softer ride. It gives a mild lift to the suspension. It has better shocks, a better steering stabilizer. They did put on bias ply tires, which I understand John's choice. They look very similar to the Snow Cruiser tires that came on these vehicles originally, but from a ride and drive perspective, a radial tire would be a nicer tire to drive on and take better advantage of that new suspension. One period edition that was made on the exterior as well is this vintage Confer roof rack. If you're a Land Cruiser junkie, you remember these being sold in all the off-road magazines and the Confer catalog back in the day. It's a really neat period accessory, and for people that are going to use these for overlanding events, going into the backwoods, kind of getting back to nature and using your vintage four-wheel drive vehicle, that helps because there's not a lot of cargo room inside an FJ40 if you bring your whole family. From the factory, they came with a rubber mat back here. This has been upgraded to carpet. It has some jute underlayment to keep the noise down, but everything looks nice and tidy. It has the seat belts. It has these factory nice little jump seats here too. There are a couple other things up front that we should talk about though. The factory rubber mat has been removed, and again, there's carpet, which is a nice aftermarket carpet kit. The body looks really nice and clean. The floors are great. An upgraded stereo with XM radio capability has been added. Under the driver's seat, there's a bunch of amplifiers and stereo hardware where the original jack and tools would sit. Now, an original jack and tools for an FJ40 is kind of desirable. You're going to spend $300, $400, $500 to replace that, but there's nowhere to put it now because there's a stereo. The aftermarket heat and air conditioning, it looks like a vintage air unit. It's integrated very nicely. Everything on this truck really looks close to new. Last but not least, let's fire it up and see what it sounds like. Everything seems to function just as it should, and again, it's a very basic Toyota truck, so not a lot of highly complex stuff in here to worry about. So I finished my appraisal of John's 76 FJ40. I've pointed out some of the weak points and some of the strong points, but there's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and I'm gonna drop that on John when we pull him out here. So let's go get him. Hey John, you ready for the rough part?
Yeah, bring it on.
I've gone over your FJ. It's awesome. Great job on the resto. I like the upgrades. There's a couple of things that affect the value, like not having smog would be a problem for somebody in California, Arizona, that kind of thing. I'm like you, I like the way you did it. This is like the right blend of period additions and some modern comfort stuff like noise insulation and heat and air conditioning that works. But let me ask you this. You bought it, you restored it, you know Land Cruisers. What do you think it's worth?
I hope to get 55 to 60, and anything above that, I'm very happy.
You're at a good spot. But the one thing that you may or may not know that's a big benefit to this vehicle is that it's a US spec truck. A lot of the trucks that we've been seeing sell lately are rest of world examples. They're imported from Colombia. They're not a US spec truck with the federal emissions and safety standards. And that is starting to become a real defining line in FJ40 values.
Okay.
People are starting to figure out the difference that if a truck was never sold here new, they're starting to have a little fight on their hands in some states with registering them and using them for road use. The fact that this was sold new, built by Toyota for the US market and sold here, I think that's a lot bigger bump than it used to be. I think it's $65,000 all day long.
All right, good. That's excellent.
Yeah. So I love it. I think the color choice, the additions, all that stuff is great, and I really appreciate you bringing it over.
It's my pleasure. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. In high school, my brother, we were looking at four-wheel drives and like Blazers and Jeeps and Land Cruisers. And he's like, if you pay another $1,000, you can get a Land Cruiser over a Jeep, and I think it'll pay off down the road. And he was correct. and now it's paid off all these years down the road.